After 31 years at the National Human Genome Research Institute, which he had been directing since 2009, Eric Green was forced to leave in March amid sweeping changes at the NIH. GenomeWeb reporter Wanja Zhang spoke to him about the Institute's accomplishments during his tenure and its future.
Since the completion of the Human Genome Project, in your opinion, what was the most important initiative for NHGRI?
If you look over the arc of what's gone on in genomics over the last pretty much 22 years, starting when the Genome Project ended, I would say the most influential high-impact project was known as the $1,000 genome. And that project, or that program, it was even bigger than a project, that program was basically described in a strategic vision that the Institute published literally the day the Human Genome Project ended. The audacity of it was that we had just sequenced the first human genome ever, and it cost about $1 billion. So we were saying we wanted to come up with new technologies and new approaches that were going to basically reduce the cost of sequencing a human genome by $1 million, having no idea how we were going to achieve it. And we did fund separate grant sets that had different levels of audacity, if you will, or how ambitious they were, knowing that the really, really ambitious ones, many of them would fail, but some of them would succeed. And the other thing that I think the Institute did is it embraced the idea that the private sector would get involved, and that we would want them to, because we would want them to commercialize anything that we were supporting that would result in intellectual property at universities. We wanted that commercialized. So we were thrilled that a lot of venture capital money came in, a lot of companies came in, and I would contend it was one of the most successful technology development efforts and public-private partnerships in the history of NIH. Because, it didn't happen overnight, but by about 2018 or 2019, somewhere around there, boom, we passed that threshold and went below $1,000 for a cost of getting a sequence of a human genome. And nowadays we talk about $100 genome as being maybe the next major goal.
Before you left office, what was the project that you were most looking forward to for the next 25 years or so?
I'm very proud of all the projects that I left behind. I think the two examples I'd give, and one is just out of the gates, and it is the clinical side. We created a program called Multiomics of Human Disease, which is specifically geared towards generating genomic data, like DNA sequence data, in addition to other omic data. And what it really is doing is getting people to think beyond DNA sequence, but also to develop the computational tools for integrating data, cross-analyzing data, and applying all that to a disease area that's important and interesting. If you go to the basic science side of it, again, I could think of multiple great projects that we're doing, but one that I think is going to get more and more attention is part of our Human Genome Reference Program, in particular, efforts to build a Pangenome reference. This is the right thing to do, just from a social justice point of view, having as much diversity as you can in your references. But at a practical, scientific, and clinical level, it's exquisitely important to do, because otherwise, if you don't have the appropriate ancestral representation in your suite of reference sequences in your pangenome, you'll miss things, and you'll miss variants, and that can be clinically a problem.
Speaking of this project that you are still, monitoring or trying to keep an eye on, are any of the projects currently being interrupted by funding, for example, or any of them have lost some of the momentum since you left office?
Many of the projects have lost momentum if they were caught in the middle of needing to get new funds, because a lot of things in 2025. A lot of advisory groups weren't held, or they got delayed. A lot of study sections got delayed. A lot of funding didn't get out the door. Some new programs haven't been funded yet. I will also tell you that many of the programs, if they had a significant diversity, equity, or inclusion component, a DEI component, some of those had to be removed, so they may have lost some funding because of it. So yes, it's been a very chaotic a year. I'm not there for the last 6 months, but I hear that there's just been a lot of hurdles and obstacles Slowly but surely, they're working their way out of it. But it has not been a fun year at NIH, is what I would say.
Post-NIH, what you been up to? What are you doing now, and how are you involved in science or genomics?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time, especially early on, just trying to be helpful to both people still at the institute who want, I had a lot of my staff lost their jobs. So on inauguration day, NHGRI had, probably, 650, 660 employees and staff and trainees. And I think there's over 100 that are no longer there now. And a good number of them, besides myself, were forced to leave. Or basically were terminated. I've also, I had a lot of seminars and a lot of visits because I usually book out a year. So I've been visiting a lot of universities and places. I'm still giving lots of talks. And I find that when I travel, a lot of places have many, many questions about what's going on at NIH. They're very confused because NIH is a complicated place when it's functional, and when it's in turmoil like it is now, people are just very confused about a lot of things that are happening or not happening. So I'm tending to be the explainer in chief because I can usually explain why they're doing certain things or why things are delayed or why things are a little bit chaotic. I've also been able to do something I really wasn't allowed to do in 31 years in the government. There's a lot of restrictions about interaction with the private sector. There's a lot of ethics rules, especially for people in leadership at NIH. And so I was not able to do any consulting, any board service, any advisory work. But now that I've retired from federal service, I'm allowed to do a lot of that. And so I have been talking to some companies, and I have been interacting with people and talking to the other part of the ecosystem, which I have great respect for, which is, small companies, big pharma, healthcare systems, and so forth. And then I also have had conversations about sort of longer term positions. And so I have basically just started a new position where I am a consultant initially to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, which is the major pediatric hospital here, and also the Department of Pediatrics and the Department of Human Genetics at Emory University School of Medicine. So I'm here in Atlanta now as a consultant, it's probably going to be a longer term circumstance, likely leading to a faculty position or some other leadership position. And but I'm only in my second week of doing this, so this is all very new for me. Now I'm not funding research, but I'm trying to help implement genomic medicine. What could they be doing to bring genomic medicine in a cutting edge, contemporary way, thinking about the future where I think there's going to be a lot more genomics in medicine.
A lot of genomic researchers or researchers in general are having uncertainty, are unsure about what's the outlook about this field. What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I feel badly because I do think it's a very stressful time. And what I can say is we can't lose sight of the future at this moment in time where we couldn't have better technologies, we couldn't have better opportunities now being aided by AI, and we can accomplish so much. And I understand why it's scary, but at the same time, now we're starting to see that the US Congress is not going to have the NIH's budget go down considerably. It looks like their budget next year will be roughly flat, nothing as draconian as some of the things we were hearing that the White House might have preferred. So hopefully the budget will be good. They're not talking about reorganizing the NIH so much anymore. They are big problems, but we've faced them before, and I just think we have to just not let it deter, especially young scientists, from living their dream. We've got to keep pushing, and we've just got to keep telling our story why this is so important, because we're getting every week wonderful genomics-based stories of clinical successes, in some cases sheer miracles. And there's so much excitement, and I think the patients can help us tell us why it's so important to keep investing in biomedical research.